What's up, D1 Nation? Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Andy Vickers, coming to you from the place for the athlete, D1 Training. Got a fitness goal? Then our turf is your turf. D1 offers elite athletic training by expert coaches in classes or one-on-one sessions for members age 7 to adult, as well as a strategic franchise model for those looking to up their professional game. Check us out online at d1training.com, d1franchise.com, or at D1 Sports on any of your favorite social platforms. Today's guest on the show is our founder and CEO, Will Bartholomew. Will founded D1 Sports Training in 2001 in his hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. His passion for sport developed early, earning all-state honors in 3 sports in high school: football, wrestling, and track. Will followed his passion for sport to the University of Tennessee, where he played fullback for Peyton Manning. While at Tennessee, Will won the 1998 National Championship and captained the team in 2001. At Tennessee, he found his passion for lifting and the training foundation for D1 Sports Training. Will's vision for D1 grew into a multi-million-dollar company with over 40 training locations across the country. Men's Health recognized D1 as a top 30 gym. D1 is now acknowledged as one of the 50 fastest growing companies. Will's involvement in his community goes beyond D1. He's a part of the Young President organization, and in his personal life, Will is married to Shelly Bartholomew, former Miss Teen USA and current model. They have 3 children, Nolan, Ty, and Matt. Without further ado, here's Will Bartholomew. Will, thanks so much for being on the show today. Glad to have you.
Fired up. Thanks, Andy.
We knew you'd bring the juice.
Let's go. Let's do the juice.
We like to jump straight in on these shows, and super unique for your episode. I think it'd be really cool that we start off just with our core values and your explanation of what those mean to us.
To me, these mean the world. This is what I built the business on. This is what I want every athlete to aspire to have. This is what every employee needs to aspire to have. This is what we review to. This is what we fire to. This is what we reward to. So the value system is so important. The first one is be a team player. Be a team player. And we are a team here. We're a high-performing team. We got world-class team members. And man, it's just like every sports team I was a part of. We really want everyone to strive to be their best at their position. And when you look around the company, you have so many people that are achieving great things and really living out that value of being a great teammate, being a great team player. The second one is we want you to be passionate for your work. And passionate meaning we want you to show up with energy and some enthusiasm. Passionate that you're going to sacrifice and you're going to go read those books that you got behind you and go
Traction's
learn a little bit
here.
more. Let's go. Go learn a little bit more. You got traction there. That's awesome. And you're going to sacrifice, when you're passionate about things, just like your kids, you're going to sacrifice some time. You're going to travel and you're going to have to go to things a little bit more because you're so passionate about it. The third one is find a way, make a smart play. Find a way, make a smart play. We want to make smart plays. We want data-driven decisions. So we want people that are looking at their data, making great decisions. And that is going to determine whether they can make a smart play or not. And last, but definitely not least, is have D1 character. There are 12 words on the wall of every D1. And those words mean so much to me. Those words are who we are as individuals, what we're aspiring to be. Words like perseverance and respect and honor and discipline, fearless. I mean, those are the words that we want every athlete to have in their life and that they experience at D1. Every coach, every general manager, and every owner. So, yeah, man, those are the four core values.
Awesome. I'm glad that we were able to name those. I mean, I'm sure that most people listening to the show know those. Certainly all of the people that are in our franchise network, they certainly live those out. But just for the broad audience, I wanted to establish that from the get-go. Now we can dive into the juicy stuff.
Let's do it.
Let's rewind it all the way back to your career as an athlete. So we can start at the high school level, all-state 3-sport athlete. Tell us what that life was like.
Well, for those of you who are listening, believe it or not, I got to rewind just a little bit more. When I was in you're going to find this interesting. Seventh grade, I was a gymnast.
Wow.
I competed all the way up until eighth grade. And I really think gymnastics really, set me up to do a lot of things in sports. And then in eighth grade, I tore my ACL. So I had a devastating knee injury as an eighth grader, non-contact. Like it was just like one of those things. It's like that happened. And my eighth grade year, I was set to wrestle 103. And if you don't know what that means I weighed 103 pounds in eighth grade. And so, but I had this torn knee. And so all of a sudden, I just dove into the weight room. I talk a lot about coaches that impact our lives. And I had a strength coach who was a volunteer strength coach that would go in and work me out and train me and build me up mentally and physically. And then my freshman year, I came back to sports. I had an okay year. And to kind of give you, I always remember things by wrestling weights. I wrestled 160 as a freshman. So I went from 103 to 160. Now, it wasn't all muscle. There was a little bit of chubbiness. And so for me, it was one of those things, my body started changing, but I had this mentality of like, man, it's a gymnast mentality of like, man, I can still control my body. I can still do the things I want to do. I was a little scat back as an eighth grader, and all of a sudden, I'm 160 pounds as a freshman. My sophomore year, I wrestled 189. So I went 103 to 189. Started getting a little recognition, started on the football team my sophomore year at linebacker, started on the wrestling team at 189. And then my junior year, I wrestled 215. So I gained a ton of weight, fell in love with the weight room, always eating, sleeping, and drinking competition. And then my senior year, I was 230 and wrestled heavyweight. So that's kind of I always think back at my wrestling, those are kind of like markers, if you will, of kind of like my weight. And so I always think about strength conditioning around that and going, I think the reason I became a three sport all-state athlete is because I took care of my body. I focused on, really like developing every year. I had those benchmarks every year. I wanted to lift, I wanted to be, my bench press to be stronger, my squat, my power clean. I wanted all those things to grow and develop with my weight. And so that really helped propel me in a great sports career.
Would you say that work ethic more so than just raw natural talent, or a good balance between both?
Man, I think work ethic, definitely, because I think there's a lot of, look, I was blessed to be born into a family, a lineage of fullbacks, a bunch of meatheads. My grandfather played college ball. My dad played college ball. And I think I was blessed with some great genetics, but also I think that work ethic is really what pushed me to be able to play at the highest level and compete at that level, and my body to withstand a lot of different things. Now, I did have a lot of injuries along the way, but it was definitely one of those things where you look back and go, if I hadn't had that work ethic, I don't think I would have gotten to where I got to.
Certainly. I feel like work ethic helps you actualize that potential. You're born with a certain amount, but you can choose whether to tap into it or not.
That's right. It's, if you could just take that mindset of just a really hard worker and you sprinkle some great genetics on there, man, you can have a great athlete.
That's right. Well, let's fast forward from that to your time at Tennessee. So you ended up eventually becoming the team captain, won a national championship, played behind Peyton Manning. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
I look back on my Tennessee days and I feel super fortunate and blessed to be around some amazing teammates. You mentioned Peyton Manning, guy like Al Wilson. I got to block for a guy named Jamal Lewis and Travis Stevens and Travis Henry. Just got I got to be around some people that were at the peak of their game and became, you know, amazing athletes and players. And that really inspired me to always become great. And when you're around those individuals, it makes you just raise your game. It makes you want to be a better player. It makes you want to be your best. And I think, coming off the summit, how good was the summit, man?
Amazing.
You did a great job.
Thank
Man,
you.
we were, when I was there, I'm looking around and I'm like, man, there are some studs in this room. There's some great great, not just athletes, but there's some great entrepreneur athletes in that room. And you see, what's happening at D1 Little Rock, and Steve Snyder and Todd Farnsworth, and you see, Devin Driscoll, you see Joe Stanford, you see these entrepreneur athletes, man, they are really leaning in and there's some really smart people to the point of what we were talking about earlier, that have got maybe some experiences and a leg up but they're really hard workers.
Yeah.
So one ingredient is, man, they show up every day. That's the ingredient of like, man, if you have that work ethic, you can accomplish great things.
What's awesome is you probably had no clue, but you just named 3 of our guests on season 1. So that's awesome that those are the people that stick out in your mind. That's great.
I actually didn't know. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So let's talk about, life after college, transitioning, trying to make it a career at that point. Some things happen. How do you end up pivoting, and how does D1 become birthed from that?
Yeah. So, when you lose your dream, my dream was to be the greatest NFL fullback. I mean, like, I had Mike Allstott, like, in my vision board of like, I'm going to be that, but better. And when you lose that dream, it's soul crushing. I mean, you have to look yourself in the mirror and go, hey, I set out to do this and I didn't do it. And I think that I remember sitting in my in-laws' upstairs rec room above the garage that we had converted into our bedroom because my wife and I were living up there. And I remember sitting up there going, man, I feel like I'm not just let other people down, but I let myself down. I didn't become what I said I was going to become. And man, I think at those low moments, you really find out who you are. We talked about D1 character earlier. Man, you really have to look in and go, who am I? What am I about? And one of the things that as I was looking in, it was like, man, I'm about hard work. I'm about getting after it. I'm about discipline. I'm about really, making the most of life. Sucking the marrow out of life and like going after it. That's what I'm about. And I really wanted to fan that flame of like, where could I find that? And so I actually got asked to come coach some hockey kids in a field, and I'm on crutches at the time. And I went and coached these kids, and I found so much juice and excitement. Man, I was putting it on them. I was like, I was putting them through the grind. Like,
on crutches.
On crutches. Yeah, one-legged. It's like, jumping in and doing, pistol squats and push-ups with more, and man, I found just a lot of excitement. I left, just my energy was back. I felt like a little bit of purpose, and I was like, man, this is what I want to do. I want to train athletes. And now I was rehabbing, planning on going back into the NFL. And so I was like, man, I'm gonna build a business around this. And at the time, there was there was strength. Some of the really wealthy high schools had strength and conditioning coaches. That's about it. There wasn't really. It was like colleges had strength and conditioning coaches, but definitely nobody had it for like secondary sports. I would say football mainly had a strength and conditioning coach, and they would like be the defaulto, baseball, basketball strength coach, like everybody, And so I was like, man, I really want to build a business around my passion here in this juice. I love being around the athletes. I was in D1 this morning. I'm like, man, this is why I'm here. I love being around people, encouraging people to reach goals and striving. And so, yeah, I opened the first location. I was just a scrappy kid who didn't know what he was doing, but I was determined. And I opened my first location. And my college roommate ran the location because I was planning on going back and playing. Yeah, we opened. I mean, it was some fun times. We had no idea what we were doing, but we had some good times doing it. A lot of learning.
And Dan was a member at that first gym, correct?
Yeah. So Murph, he came about. First of all, how Murph and I met, we were at I went to one of those, potluck. It was I think it was a Labor Day potluck deal, and where you go to like a neighborhood and you bring a dish. And Murph was sitting in his lawn chair. He big timed me. I don't think he even stood up and shook my hand. And I was like, I like this guy. He's got a little attitude.
He left this part out of the story.
He probably wouldn't tell this part. And man, I started talking to him. I was like, I always been I really relate to that military type personality. My dad was a West Pointer. I kind of grew up around that, and that mentality I love. I love that excitement and that juice. And so when I saw Murph, I was like, man, this guy, let's see what he's got. He was a skinny little soccer player back then. And I said, come on in. And so he was one of my first adult members. And so I lifted with him. So we would basically became lifting partners, and we would push each other and make sure we're lifting enough weight, that type of thing. And then we would always go to a little dive breakfast bar after and talk shop. And I was fortunate enough to talk him into coming and working for me. But man, we became fast friends. So you become fast friends when you're lifting partners and you start doing pranks on each other. So we definitely did a few pranks every once in a while.
I can see that. I can kind of picture like a documentary in my mind of what these interactions might have looked like.
Yeah, there's some paintball guns, fireworks. It was a good time.
So from there, after that first location, you start doing partnership locations, correct?
Yeah. So, the first location, as we got things humming and started figuring out, like how to charge, how to do class schedules, how to do workouts. I always had an itch to do something a little bit bigger. And I re-signed with the Denver Broncos, and I go to get my physical, and I fail my physical. So the same knee that I had surgery on, I actually tore my ACL again during rehab that I did not know. And so I never forget that I was pulling up to D1 to come get a workout. I was thinking, I'm in 2 weeks, I'm back out in Colorado for training camp. And the doctor called me and he's like, hey, are you sitting down? And I'm like, what? He's like, are you sitting? I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting in my car. And he's like, you've re-torn your ACL. We need to get you in for surgery. Like, you must have done it during. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I can squat 450 pounds. Like you're crazy. And it was devastating again. So I was like, had this blow. I get this thing going. I'm like all excited about D1. But really, I'm really like, man, I'm going back to playing. And man, when that hit me, it was hard because I had to turn all that juice and energy into something else. I had to like focus it. And I was like, man, I really want to scale this business. I'd love to see if I could do this in more locations. There were some ups and downs along the way and some curves, hiring the wrong people, doing things, but we found a way to make a smart play. And we ended up over the course of the next 15 years, building 32 corporate locations. We had at the time, my thought process was like, hey, there's only one D1 in a city. There's only one place for the athlete in the city. And I didn't realize how many athletes we were missing out by only having one. And at the time too, I was like, man, so focused on having a larger location, not thinking about profits, but just thinking about like when people pull up and the experience. And so, we did 32 corporate locations. We would partner up with celebrity athletes. They'd own a minority stake in the business. And then we would build these kind of big 18,000 square foot buildings. Some of them were retrofits, like we'd buy a building and retrofit it, and some of them we built out of the ground. So it was kind of a crazy ride for a good 15 years.
For sure. And I think that that's super awesome to note in the fitness franchise space, like that we spent a decade and a half refining the business model before you truly scaled it.
Yeah, and I think we tried a lot of not just. I love refining's a good term. Thanks, Andy. No, I mean we screwed some things up, right? We screwed some things up, and we made some mistakes, and it cost us money, and we learned. You learn so much from those screw ups. You learn so much, and just feel really blessed to like live out and see the other side and go, man, how do we optimize? How do we make this thing better? How do we really live out the mission, which is to be the place for the athlete, right? How do we put that in every city? And so, yeah, we embarked on flipping the model. And I don't know if you've heard the franchising. Have you heard the franchising story on how we decided to franchise?
I'm not sure.
I am in New York at the time. I'm meeting with one of our vendors. So I'm meeting with one of our vendors. We have a big meeting, go to dinner, and man, I am stressed. I'm pretty stressed. Like, we have the real estate company with 32 buildings, a construction business, all those types of things. We have a therapy business. So this therapy business is like booming and growing. And we have a gym business. And man, I wake up and I'm like, man, this thing needs to shift. Like, I was like, I'm watching what everybody else is doing in fitness. I'm watching people. I'm learning different things. I've surrounded myself with a lot of smart people. And it's like, man, there's just got to be a better way. It's got to be a better way. And so we did a deep dive the year prior on what makes a successful D1. And one of the things we found is that, man, when the local general manager felt empowered like an owner and acted like an owner, the businesses humped, and they really became the D1 person in that market. They didn't know me. And so it really lent itself towards franchising. And so I wake up on this New York cold day. I go to get in the cab, and I'm on the way to the airport, and I call Murph, and I'm like, hey, we're flipping this whole thing to a franchise. He's like, what? He's like, we're flipping this whole thing to a franchise. I was like, here's how we're going to do it. Da, 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 da. And he's like, whoa, slow down. It's like, that's a lot of work. It sounds like a lot of time. We got a good thing going. What are you talking about? And I'm like, man, we're flipping it to a franchise. He bucked me pretty hard. But I was super persistent, and, man, so glad we did, because it really helped us live out our mission, which is to be the place for the athlete in all these cities and to help these athletes reach their goals. And we wouldn't have done that if we hadn't had the resilience and perseverance to kind of grow through. It's hard changing, right? It's hard changing, and so I'm super thankful that Murph and all the other team members decided to come along with it.
Yeah, no, certainly. And throughout that process, you've got some pretty significant celebrity athlete partners. How'd you go about getting those partnerships, getting their support?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those guys came kind of through the first iteration of the business. So they would partner up with us in their local city. And we just had to have some frank conversations, when we decided to franchise, go, hey, we would love for you to be a part of what we're doing, but here's what it would look like for you individually. And some of the athletes decided to not partner with us, and a lot of the great athletes decided to partner with us. You mentioned Peyton, Tebow, Chris Paul. These guys saw the vision. I was able to talk to them about, hey, here's the way the business was. This is what it's going to become. And man, they bought into that vision, which is I'm very grateful for that, because without their belief in me, when you have other people believe in you, it really means a lot.
Well, let's talk about just a screenshot of where we are as a company right now and where you see us headed in the next few years. I think today, as we speak, if I'm accurate, we're at 138 locations open in operation. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So we have, today we sit here with some amazing franchise owners, some amazing general managers, some of the best coaches in the country, training, a lot of great, 30,000 plus athletes around the country. And so it's really exciting to watch that come to fruition. I think where we're going, there's definitely some markers that are coming along the way. Like, hey, we're going to get to 200 locations open, right? That's coming next, or maybe 150 first, and then 200 facilities open. And then we're going to have the trickle down effect of how many athletes are training there. All of that is coming to reality. I think the big vision for the business is really living out that mission statement, which is to be the place for the athlete. We just announced our app, which is exciting because now we can be the digital place for the athlete, right? The digital place for the athlete. And really, there's so many other things. I mean, think about it in your athletic ventures. It's like, hey, what to eat? What supplements do we need to take? What to wear? We really feel like D1 is at the center point of what athletes are going to be doing for the next generation, the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting.
Yeah, I think that Dan referred to it as a lifestyle brand now, which is an awesome way to think about it. It's like, we are the place for the athlete, but we're so much more.
So much more, man. We got merch. Look at these hats and shirts. I think, like, all jokes aside, I think this country, sports is an ever-changing world, and there's more and more money being poured into it. There's more and more time and investment. There's more and more passion. There's more and more conviction. I mean, people getting fights over a ball game, right? And it's like, man, you live in the great state of Alabama where they go in depression if they lose a ball game, right? So, you think about how much sports influence our life, and it's like, where are we getting our great content? And I'll use one that hits home right now. Is like, I have two D1 athletes as kids, and I got one aspiring D1 athlete, and he's asking me the question of like, Dad, well, how's the star rating work? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me find out. And he's like, Dad, how does NIL work? And like, who gets this and who gets what? And I'm like, man, those are just so, those are great questions. And we as just as athletes, as a country, we need a place to go to get these answers. And I feel like D1, we are positioned to be that. That's why we're doing this, right? It's not just talking business. It's talking about, athletics and sports and all these things that we care deeply about.
Yeah. And, I always like how you highlight an emphasis on a service first concept. Like, we are here to serve the athletes, and really it starts with us serving our franchisees so that they can better serve the athletes. And I think that's very important to keep, central to our culture since at the end of the day, they are our primary focus.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, I think, our athletes are why we are here. And so giving them everything we got, whether it's a nutrition manual to a tip on, cold plunging to, how to sleep better to not just training. I think we're way more than just, hey, we have the latest and greatest exercises. Don't get me wrong. I love that stuff, but I think we're way more than that to these athletes out there. And I think that's our duty. That's our duty is we've created places where these athletes can come and get that knowledge and get that insight that it's really hard to find. There's a lot of information out there, and we want to be that trusted place. So when you see that brand, when you see that logo, you're like, man, I can go to D1. They have great coaching. They have people that I can trust, that they're going to point me in the right direction, that are going to have, the athlete first. They're going to serve the athlete first. It's not about them, but it's about what they can give. And so as long as we keep that mindset, we will win. We will win in not just business, but in life. And so we want to constantly be serving.
Man, I was going to ask you to, bring the juice for an outro, but that's it. I think we need to mic drop on that. And, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I know D1 Nation will as well. Is there any last parting statement that you want to say, maybe to fire up athletes who are, following the same footsteps as you were?
Yeah, just say anybody who's listening to this out there, like I just want to impart that this journey that you're on is one of something that you're gonna have to like look back on at some point and go like, man, did I do it with character? Did I do it with that D1 character? And so as I look back on my journey, and I'm imparting knowledge to my kids, to athletes all the time, to business owners, and I always want to remind them, it's like, man, let's do it with character. Let's do it with, extreme ownership. Let's do it with, an excitement. Let's do it with a passion. Let's do it with the juice. My buddy Kevin out there, Kevin Engelberg, you're useless if you're juiceless. That's what he always said. We want to have some juice. We want to, step into a meeting or into a workout with passion and an energy and excitement for life. And so I think sports provide so much of that. But what people, if you go and you ask all the great athletes, you ask Tim Tebow, you ask Peyton Manning, you ask Chris Paul, you ask all these great athletes. I get to interact with. I talk to Eddie George about. Like you ask them all, and you're like, hey, what do you miss? What do you wish you impart on the next generation? They always say the locker room or the weight room or the training or my buddy, I used to hang out with him. And it's the relationships and the connection that happen with that grind in the locker room and in the weight room that make sports so special. It's not just about the performance. And that's who we are as a business. We're the behind the scenes. We're the people helping athletes reach those goals, but we're not in the limelight, right? They're in the limelight. And so I just think it's really important for us to constantly be keeping that on the forefront of our mind, constantly be encouraging that, because ultimately that's where all the real work happens, right? That's the real work is the behind the scenes. So fall in love with behind the scenes, baby. Go enjoy it. So that way when you're on stage, when you can go perform.
That's right. Awesome. Well, let's leave it at that. Thank you so much for your time, Will, and look forward to getting this episode out.
Let's do it.
The D1 podcast is proudly brought to you today by Prime. D1 training is the place for the athlete. If you have a fitness goal, we'll help you get there. Visit d1training.com to find the closest D1 turf near you. And be sure to check us out at D1 Sports on all social platforms to learn more about what we do for our athletes. Also, check us out at d1franchise.com for information about how you can bring a D1 training to your community. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share the show. Thanks. The information provided on this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not guarantee any specific level of earnings or financial success. Results may vary based on numerous factors. Any earnings or income statements are hypothetical. D1 Sports Franchise LLC and its affiliates, the hosts and guests of this podcast, are not liable for any losses or damages related to the use of the information provided. This information is not intended as an offer to sell or the solicitation of an offer to buy a franchise. An offer is made only after a disclosure by a franchise disclosure document, also known as an FDD.